Your boss sends a curt email criticizing your work. Your spouse forgets to pick up milk. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Suddenly, you're furious, snapping at everyone around you, replaying the incident for hours. Sound familiar? Here's what nobody tells you. That overwhelming emotional surge flooding your system right now. It's not actually about the email, the milk, or the traffic. You're experiencing something neuroscientists call an amygdala hijack. And understanding what's really happening in your brain during these moments changes everything. Most people think emotional overreactions mean they're losing control, or that something's wrong with them. The truth is far more interesting. Your brain has two competing systems constantly battling for dominance. There's your prefrontal cortex, the rational thinking center that helps you make logical decisions and see situations clearly. Then there's your amygdala, an almond-shaped structure deep in your brain that acts like an overprotective security guard, constantly scanning for threats. When something triggers you, your sensory information hits the thalamus first. Here's where it gets fascinating. Part of that information takes a shortcut directly to your amygdala, while another part travels the longer route to your prefrontal cortex. Your amygdala processes this information milliseconds faster than your rational brain can. If it detects danger, even perceived danger, it floods your system with stress hormones and essentially hijacks your entire brain before your thinking center can evaluate whether the threat is real. This is why you snap at your partner over something trivial and immediately regret it. Your amygdala saw a threat to your self-worth or safety and launched a full-scale emergency response before your prefrontal cortex could remind you that forgotten milk isn't actually a catastrophe. Research shows an inverse relationship between these two brain regions. When your amygdala activates, blood and oxygen rush there instead of your prefrontal cortex. Your ability to think clearly, solve problems, and respond rationally literally shuts down. What makes this even more complicated is that your overreactions aren't really about the present moment at all. Think about Sarah, who prided herself on being detail-oriented and efficient. During a team meeting, her colleague John casually mentioned a potential error in her project report. His tone was calm, constructive, helpful. But Sarah felt her chest tighten. Her face flushed. Before she could stop herself, she raised her voice defensively, listing all the hours she'd invested, all the thoroughness she'd applied. The room went silent. Her team exchanged uncomfortable glances. What just happened? John's mild comment about a possible error triggered something far deeper in Sarah. Her perfectionism, her fear of criticism, her need to prove her competence. These weren't responses to John's words. They were responses to childhood wounds, past experiences where criticism meant rejection, where mistakes meant she wasn't good enough. Her amygdala recognized a pattern from the past and reacted as if her professional survival was under attack. The triggers behind your overreactions are typically unhealed wounds from your past. Every time you get disproportionately angry about unfairness, disrespect, or threats to your self-esteem, you're not just reacting to what's happening now. You're reacting to every time you felt that way before. Your brain has learned that certain situations are dangerous based on previous experiences, so it launches defensive responses automatically. Here's what makes this particularly challenging. In your subjective reality, your reaction isn't an overreaction at all. When Aaron's 5-year-old daughter said she wanted to draw by herself instead of reading books with him at bedtime, he felt something twist in his gut. He knew he was about to overreact, but he couldn't stop himself. Then you can go straight to bed. No books, no drawing, no nothing. "Good night," he said coldly to his innocent child. His harsh response to a developmentally normal request had nothing to do with his daughter's behavior. His emotional brain interpreted her preference for independent play as rejection, activating deep-seated fears from his own childhood of feeling unwanted or dismissed. The intensity of his anger matched the intensity of his inner wound, not the actual situation. This is crucial to understand. You're not broken or defective when you overreact. You're experiencing a temporary neurobiological event. Your amygdala is doing exactly what it evolved to do, protecting you from perceived threats. The problem is that it can't distinguish between actual physical danger and social or emotional discomfort. A critical email triggers the same alarm system as a physical attack. Research reveals something else that makes overreactions worse: accumulated stress. How you react to small daily hassles actually impacts your psychological and physical health more than major life events. When stress compounds, your emotional responses intensify. You have less capacity to stay calm. Sleep deprivation disrupts the connection between your prefrontal cortex and amygdala, making overreactions even more likely. Being emotionally or physically depleted means you're operating with fewer resources to manage your reactions. But here's what changes everything. The moment you understand that your overreaction is a hijack, not a character flaw, you create space for a different response. That space is where transformation happens. So, how do you work with this space instead of being controlled by it? The most immediate intervention is simple acknowledgement. When you feel that surge of emotion, that tightness in your chest, that heat rising, say internally, "I'm feeling angry right now." That's it. Just naming the emotion activates your prefrontal cortex and begins reducing the intensity. Your neocortex comes back online. This isn't suppression or control. You're not pushing the emotion away. You're simply observing it, which creates just enough distance for your thinking brain to re-engage. Next comes the pause. Research shows that waiting just 6 seconds before responding can completely change your reaction. 6 seconds. Count them if you need to. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. During that pause, take slow, deep breaths. Diaphragmatic breathing directly activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the biological brake pedal that calms your fight or flight response. Breathe in for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Exhale for 6. Your body physically cannot maintain peak emotional arousal when you're breathing this way. But what about the stories running through your mind during that pause? This is where cognitive reappraisal becomes your most powerful tool. Your initial interpretation of events happens automatically, shaped by your history and wounds. But you can deliberately reinterpret the situation through a different lens. When your boss sends that curt email, your automatic story might be, "They think I'm incompetent. I'm about to get fired." A reappraised story could be, "They're under pressure and communicating quickly." This feedback is meant to help, not attack. Same email, different story. Completely different emotional experience. Reappraisal works by increasing activity in your prefrontal cortex while simultaneously decreasing activation in your amygdala. Over time, this practice literally rewires your brain's emotion processing circuits. The amygdala becomes less reactive. Your prefrontal cortex maintains better control. Neuroplasticity means your brain can change, but only through consistent practice. There's a catch, though. Reappraisal works best when emotional intensity is lower. When you're already at peak activation, your ability to reframe diminishes significantly. This is why prevention matters as much as intervention. Start tracking your triggers. Keep a simple journal for 1 week. Every time you overreact, note what happened, who was involved, what they specifically said or did, and most importantly, what it reminded you of. Patterns will emerge. Maybe you consistently overreact to authority figures who seem impatient. Maybe sarcasm always sets you off because a sibling used it to hurt you. These patterns are your emotional blueprint. Understanding them gives you predictive power. You can prepare mentally before entering situations where your triggers are likely to surface. Self-distancing offers another layer of protection. When something triggers you, mentally step outside yourself. Imagine watching the situation from across the room, or picture yourself explaining it to a friend next week. This psychological distance prevents you from being overwhelmed by the immediate emotional flood. Athletes who practice self-distancing show significantly less emotional reactivity and aggressive behavior over time. The technique creates space between stimulus and response. Or try temporal distancing. Project yourself 5 years into the future and look back at this moment. Will this email matter then? Will this traffic incident be something you even remember? Often the answer is no, and that perspective shift deflates the emotional intensity immediately. Your friend spills coffee on your favorite shirt. Rage begins building. Now imagine looking back on this moment 5 years from now. You might even laugh about it. That shift in time perspective changes everything. Prevention also requires addressing accumulated stress. When you're depleted, everything triggers you more easily. Build replenishment into your week deliberately. This isn't optional self-care fluff. It's emotional maintenance. Meditation or mindfulness practices strengthen the connection between your amygdala and prefrontal cortex over time, making hijacks less frequent and less intense. Physical exercise burns off stress hormones and improves emotion regulation. Creative activities like drawing, cooking, or gardening engage different neural pathways and restore your emotional reserves. Address unresolved issues promptly. That thing that's been bothering you for months? It's draining your emotional capacity constantly. Every new irritation lands on top of that unresolved weight, making you more reactive to everything. Handle it. Have the difficult conversation. Set the boundary. Resolve what can be resolved. Otherwise, the smallest inconvenience becomes the final straw that breaks you. Here's what most people miss. Change happens slowly. You won't master this overnight. Every time you get triggered and overreact, you have data. What wound did that activate? What story did you tell yourself? What could you do differently next time? This isn't failure. It's feedback. Your emotional patterns took years to develop. They'll take time to reshape. But with each conscious response instead of automatic reaction, you're building new neural pathways. You're teaching your brain a different way. The space between trigger and response has always been there. Now you know how to find it, expand it, and use it to reclaim control over your emotional life. That's where your real power lives. You're not trying to eliminate emotional reactions. You're learning to respond instead of being hijacked. The next time someone triggers you, you'll recognize what's actually happening beneath the surface. Your amygdala will still activate, but now you have the tools to engage your prefrontal cortex before you say or do something you'll regret. That's the difference between being controlled by your emotions and being in control of how you respond to them. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss what's next.